The man emerged from the canyon in early October, the dry wind swirling around his coat and dust stinging his eyes. He rode a paint gelding, its left hind leg bearing a noticeable limp, and he bore no saddlebag, no bedroll, only a rifle stained with dried blood and a wide-brimmed hat that cast shadows over a face uncomfortably gaunt. The people at the Twin Forks post office would later remark that he resembled someone who hadn't uttered a word in months, perhaps even years. They were largely correct. He bypassed the town entirely. He watered his horse at the trough, offering a brief nod to the blacksmith, who seemed too taken aback to respond with a wave. Then, he rode eastward into the hills, where the terrain split open into gulches and juniper. In that desolate expanse of nothingness lay the Flint Ranch, though to label it as such felt more like a gesture of politeness. The outbuildings stood in a state of disrepair, their structures half collapsed, while the fencing succumbed to rust and briars. The cattle, once a familiar sight, had long since scattered, leaving the land eerily quiet. The main house remained, though it leaned precariously on its decaying foundation, as if it bore the weight of its abandonment with a sense of shame. Within those walls resided a girl. Mara Flint was her name, a 17-year-old girl, slender from the pangs of hunger and the weight of relentless toil, her face bearing the faint scars of past violence, slowly mending. Each morning, her right eye remained stubbornly shut, a lingering reminder of the blow dealt by her stepfather with a fence post. He passed away a fortnight ago, cast from a borrowed steed in a drunken stupor, his skull fractured against a creek stone, and she hadn't interred him so much as hauled him into the root cellar, allowing the chill to take care of the remainder. The earth lay stubbornly unyielding, resisting any attempt to break its surface. By that time, she had ceased her prayers altogether. She caught sight of the cowboy before he noticed her presence. She observed him from the elevated room, peering through a narrow gap in the window shutter, her heart inching up into her throat. She was unaware of the nature he possessed. A wanderer, a scavenger, a seeker of cattle thieves. Yet, he refrained from circling the house or raising his voice in a call. He dismounted slowly, inspecting the decayed porch steps, before settling onto the lowest one, his back turned to the door. As if he had arrived to find solace, not to seize, Mara lingered for 30 minutes before finally unfastening the door. She concealed her stepfather's revolver behind her back. Years had passed since it last saw action, and uncertainty loomed over whether the bullets would still function. Yet if the situation demanded it, she would pull the trigger. He remained still, not turning. "You lost?" she inquired. He gave a slight shake of his head. "Then concern yourself with my territory." He glanced back, his eyes a muted gray reminiscent of tin shrouded in smoke. "Water," he remarked. She gave a single nod, yet her grip remained firm. "Indeed, it seems your time has come to an end." "I am capable of working," he stated. "Your lack of enthusiasm is quite disappointing." He remained silent. She emerged, her boots whispering against the uneven floorboards. Her dress hung in tatters at the shoulder, marred by the remnants of a long-ago mishap, where an egg had shattered against her chest, leaving behind a crust of dried yolk. She appeared to be a person who had thrived solely on her own sense of pride. "I don't need help," she declared. "You are not being truthful." It nearly brought a smile to her lips. It had been years since anyone had dared to call her out on that. He stood slowly, unthreatening, akin to a tree swaying gently in the breeze. In close proximity, he exuded the scent of aged leather mingled with the faint trace of blood, long dried and rendered harmless. He appeared to be in his 30s, perhaps 35, with deeply tanned skin and eyes that rarely blinked. He possessed a stillness that seemed to echo from distant realms. "What shall I call you?" she inquired. He took a moment to pause. "Do not approach too closely," he remarked. "Are you foolish individual?" "Negative." She squinted her gaze. "Only then can you find your voice." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. She raised the revolver, not precisely aiming but displaying it with a certain intent. "Step inside," she urged, "or keep moving. But linger out here too long, and the coyotes might mistake you for dinner." He trailed behind her as she entered. The winter arrived ahead of schedule. Snow silently advanced before the oaks donned their golden attire, and by November, the path to town lay beyond reach. The cowboy remained still, showing no inclination to depart. He swept the chimney, repaired the barn roof, took down a buck, and preserved the meat, all without expecting anything in return. He refrained from touching her, spoke only when addressed, and took to sleeping in the woodshed on a straw bed he crafted with his own hands. Mara observed him, for she held a deep-seated distrust of silence. In her home, silence had forever been a harbinger of peril. It signified a man lost in intoxication, steeped in contemplation, or deliberating on which fracture to inflict next. Yet the silence of the cowboy held a unique quality. It was unyielding, not pausing for a moment. It simply existed. On a bright morning, she presented him with a cup of coffee. He accepted it in silence, yet his gaze darted upward as if he were unaccustomed to receiving such attention. "Do you have a name?" she inquired once more. He has taken a sip. "Asilas." She surveyed him with a discerning gaze. He honed his knife against the whetstone, each stroke deliberate and measured, a steady rhythm echoing in the quiet air. "You found yourself amidst the chaos of battle." He gave a single nod. "Which one shall it be?" He gazed beyond her, through the ajar door, where delicate flakes of snow began to drift down in gentle, languid spirals. The subject that remained shrouded in silence, that silenced her. For 3 days, silence enveloped them, yet she observed him diligently chopping more wood than necessary, stacking it neatly by the house to spare her the trouble of trudging through the drifts. As the weight of the snow caused the roof to bow, he ascended it unbidden. As the wind howled like a pack of wolves cascading down the hills, he remained awake by the door, gun resting across his lap, simply observing. On a particular evening, she presented him with a bowl of stew. It was a slender cut of rabbit meat, accompanied by an onion, yet it radiated warmth. She placed it on the floor next to his cot and began to turn away, but he grasped her wrist gently, just enough to halt her departure. "You are safe now," he said. She paused for a moment, grappling with the understanding that eluded her. She withdrew. "I was never safe," she said, "but I'm still here." He nodded as if that were the correct response. The days dwindled, the nights encroached. Mara ceased her vigil over the horizon, no longer searching for any indication of his departure. She ceased the charade of indifference, acknowledging the comfort his presence brought as he lingered by the door. The silence that lingered between them lost its edge. It draped softly, enveloping the chill with a comforting embrace. Yet trouble does not disappear in the winter, it simply retreats into the shadows. In the waning days of December, 3 men made their way from the town. They had been told the flints were no more, and arrived to scavenge the remains. A girl was discovered instead, accompanied by a man who, upon their attempt to open the door, found it yielding to Silas's touch. On a frigid night, the first one remarked, a smile that revealed nothing but sharp teeth and a complete absence of warmth. "I heard this place was devoid of life." "Not anymore," Silas declared. The second man adjusted his coat, revealing the grip of a pistol. "We are not seeking a confrontation. A discovery has been made." The third man unleashed a glob of saliva into the pristine snow. "It's not worth it," he murmured. "As spring approaches, she will find herself deprived regardless." They departed, yet not without vows lingering in the air. Such men do not take kindly to rejection. Mara gently shut the door, sealing off the world beyond. Silas remained still. "They will return," she remarked. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I'm not going anywhere. I didn't expect that from you." In that moment, her gaze fell upon him, truly taking him in. "You appeared as if from thin air," she remarked. "What is the reason behind this?" Silas inclined his head thoughtfully. "At times," he remarked, "there exists a person still deserving of our unwavering support." She remained silent, lingering in the doorway as the snow fell like ash, and the wind roared against the mountains, transforming the stillness between them into something palpable. It started to evoke a sense of anticipation, as if something was on the horizon, as if winter were merely the initial trial. By January, the girl had attuned herself to the cadence of his footsteps in the snow. Silas moved with a distinctiveness that set him apart from other men. He glided as if tethered to Prince, reluctant to part ways, despite the absence of anyone left to pursue him. He would awaken before the first light of dawn, departing from the house for hours on end, only to return with either game, branches for the fire, or sometimes nothing at all. She never inquired about his activities in the woods. There was an unspoken weight in the way he navigated her inquiries, a hint that those pauses were sharper than they appeared. She kept herself occupied, cleared out the cellar, constructed shelves for the root vegetables she had successfully preserved, and mastered the art of skinning a rabbit without damaging the pelt. As she bled in the snow one morning, the crimson stark against the white too much and too sudden, he remained silent, not inquiring about her pain. With the stove now aglow, I left her nestled in the warmth of the bed, choosing instead the chill of the floor beside it, accepting the discomfort without a word. Such was his manner of communication, not through spoken language, but through deeds, and the pauses in between. On certain nights she would awaken to the gentle murmur of his sleep-talking, a soft cadence as if he were striving to keep his words from being overheard. At times he murmured names, at other moments he uttered numbers. As soon as she heard his cry, it pierced the air, not loud but sharp, reminiscent of a man flayed in a dream. As dawn broke, his expression remained inscrutable, yet his hands trembled as he grasped his coffee cup. It went unspoken. They shared a silent agreement regarding the matters that remained concealed. Yet soon after, the wolves arrived, their presence marked by haunting howls. Then a lamb burst through the fence, its remnants scattered, accompanied by claw prints in the snow resembling dark spiders. At night, they began igniting flames, carefully arranging dry brush and kerosene around the perimeter of the house. Selah had secured boards over the windows. He lay awake through those nights. She did not either. What was it that held them in suspense? One morning she inquired while scattering seed for the chickens, who were too timid to partake. "Cold," he remarked, a hint of desperation or perhaps weakness in his voice. Her gaze locked onto his.
"They will find themselves waiting for quite some time indeed."
February struck with a fierceness unmatched by the others. The door of the outhouse had succumbed to the chill, sealing itself in a frosty embrace. The handle of the pump shattered in the biting cold. She began to lose sensation in her fingertips, and Selah insisted she wear his gloves. He ventured forth without any protection. She observed them fracture and bleed, and not once did she hear him voice a complaint. One night lingered in her memory, unforgettable and vivid. He entered the room after hours, rifles draped casually over one shoulder, a stain of blood marking his coat, though it was not his own. A boot belonging to a man, she noted, dangled from his belt by its laces. He cast it into the flames in silence. She refrained from inquiring. Yet that night, after she believed he had drifted off, he lingered in the doorway of her room for what felt like an eternity. Then he spoke, his voice calm and steady. "Have you ever contemplated departing from this place?" She glanced at him, her complexion ghostly from the moonlight spilling onto the frost-laden window. "To what destination shall I venture? Any place is preferable to the depths of despair." She raised herself upright. "Do you believe this is hell?" He offered a slight shrug, neither dismissive nor indifferent, but rather tinged with resignation. She gazed at her hands, noting the cracked skin and the ragged edges of her nails. "I doubt that the depths of hell would have allowed me to endure for this long." He offered a silent nod, then turned and walked away. That night she was engulfed in a dream of flames, wolves, and the sharp sound of breaking bone. Amidst this chaos, Selah stood in the snow, devoid of a face, merely a hollow space where his features once resided. She awoke trembling. March ushered in a sudden and violent thaw. Icicles shattered from the eaves in sharp, snapping spears. The creek swelled and swept away the fence. Yet the true calamity arrived on a balmy night when the moon hung heavy and muted, and Myra caught the scent of kerosene lingering in the shadows. She rose before he did, pulling the rifle down from its perch above the door. Selah encountered her in the kitchen, his eyes already narrowed in scrutiny. He uttered, "Smoke," from behind. They approached like whispers in the night. 3, perhaps 4 figures, their faces obscured, torches flickering in their grasp. They remained silent, offering no cries or inquiries, merely unleashing flames and chuckling as the shed ignited. Selah did not shoot first. He lingered patiently until they had traversed the boundary of the fence. He emerged into the yard, his resolve unwavering, and with a single precise shot, he brought the first man down, the bullet piercing clean through the knee. The others dispersed, their voices rising in a cacophony of shouts. A shot rang out, striking the porch rail just inches from Myra's hip. She remained unyielding. With steady determination, she took aim and squeezed the trigger. The shot went astray. She had never taken the life of anything more formidable than a raccoon. Acellus was not one to make mistakes. As the haze dissipated and the embers flickered faintly, 2 men lay lifeless. One made its way back to the road, leaving a trail of blood in its wake. The fourth, however, remained lost to them, though evidence lingered in the form of drag marks and tufts of hair ensnared in the fence. Sela returned indoors in silence, methodically cleaned his gun, removed his coat, and let it fall to the floor. Myra filled the tin cups with whiskey. Neither of them partook in it. At dawn, she took it upon herself to bury one of the men, a stranger whose name eluded her and whose fate held no significance for her. She wielded the very shovel that had once occupied her thoughts as a weapon against her stepfather's spine. In the aftermath, she lingered by the grave, her gaze drifting toward the hills. The arrival of spring was on the horizon. The trees would awaken with new buds. The town would listen. A rider would set forth. They consistently did. She discovered Sela perched on the porch, diligently repairing the stock of his rifle. "You remained," she remarked. He kept his gaze fixed downward. "You needn't have done that." "Negative. Yet you did." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. She moved nearer, just within reach, to catch a glimpse of the weathered scar tracing his jawline. It appeared as though an attempt had been made to sever his throat, yet the task remained only partially completed. "What was her name?" she inquired. His fingers ceased their dance. "The one you were unable to rescue." As he raised his gaze, she caught a glimpse of anger etched upon his features, yet it was clear that it was not directed at her. It was for something much more ancient. "Sylvie," he uttered. She lingered in anticipation. "At the age of 10, she was the daughter of a woman I had let down. In my attempts to atone for my past mistakes, I only succeeded in bringing about her demise." Mara took her place beside him. The wind swept the lifeless leaves across the yard. "Do you truly believe that remaining here compensates for it?" "Negative." She gazed at the woodshed, its form charred and crumpled, and the grave nestled beneath the cottonwood, while the mountains loomed in the distance, still adorned with streaks of snow. "Yet, you choose to remain regardless." "I exist." Once more, silence envelops the space, yet this time it seemed to embody a connection, a knot woven with care and precision. Mara reclined against the rail, allowing her weary bones to find solace. The birds were returning once more. The earth would begin to soften. Once more, trouble would arrive. Yet she would not face it in solitude when the moment arrived. As April approached, the earth started to awaken, resonating with the deep, rich sounds of thawing soil. The creek surged with vigor, carving fresh channels through the pasture, reminiscent of veins etched in wounded flesh. The remnants of winter lingered, with snow nestled in the shaded gullies and frost adorning the mornings. Yet a gentle warmth began to weave through the air, imparting a sense of fragility to all it touched. Sela has constructed a new chicken coop using the salvaged boards from the charred remains of the shed. He acted without seeking approval, as if it were a task he had been destined to undertake all along. Mara observed him from the porch, a partially repaired quilt resting in her lap. She continued to stitch, driven by instinct, rather than by comfort. Her hands remained unfamiliar with the concept of rest. He remained mostly silent that month, yet he lingered nearby, near enough to be noticed, distant enough to grant her the freedom she needed. At dawn, she noticed him observing her as she cleansed the blood from her hands, the remnants of a rooster she had just gutted after it had turned on the hens. His gaze held no pity. It conveyed something entirely different. Perhaps it is acknowledgement, or perhaps it is esteem. The town failed to dispatch the law enforcement. Whispers spread like wildfire, a trail of shattered bones and grieving souls. Men left hollow, their hearts devoid of the hunger for retribution. They spoke of Flintland as a place of haunting, not by specters of the past, but by something far more sinister, a man, whose gaze never wavered as he pulled the trigger, and a girl who stood unyielding, her eyes fixed on the scene unfolding before her. Yet, trouble flows like a river. If it doesn't originate from above, it will emerge from below. A wagon approached, its red canvas worn and weathered, wheels cracked from age, drawn by 4 horses that moved with a slow, deliberate grace along the forgotten trail, a path untouched since the echoes of war faded into silence. A man took the wheel. A woman perched beside him, a dark shawl draping over her even darker eyes. Mara was the first to spot them. As she moved along the north fence line, inspecting the snares, the wind shifted, bringing with it the unmistakable scent of sweat and iron. She returned to the house at a measured pace, not breaking into a run. It was a lesson imparted by Salus to never run, to never reveal fear. It merely nourishes the entity lurking behind you. He encountered her at the kitchen door, rifle poised in his grasp. She mentioned a wagon, a couple of miles away. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. They remained visible. They lingered in anticipation. The wagon ambled in around noon, creeping along like a solemn procession. The man, clad in war-torn city attire, his garments hardened by the relentless grip of dust, halted by the gate, while the woman beside him remained unblinking, her gaze steady and unwavering. Neither offered a smile. That was the initial indication that something was amiss. "Are you Flint's girl?" the man inquired. Mara advanced with purpose. "Mara is the name." He inclined his head slightly. "A name once held significance. It continues to do so." At last the woman stirred, drawing her shawl back with a deliberate motion. Her visage bore the marks of time, etched with scars that were neither new nor shallow, but rather profound and tangled. A blade had carved its mark upon her, yet she emerged from each wound unbroken. "You know who she is," Salus murmured softly behind Mara. "Negative. Breda Trask." The name held no significance for Mara, yet Salus eased his grip on the rifle ever so slightly. The man on the wagon let loose a glob of spit. "We are in search of an individual, a man by the name of Ash Murdoch. He has crossed your path." Salus shook his head in disbelief. Breda Trask spoke then, her voice rough as if she had swallowed shards of glass. "He rode alongside the Red Company, slaying 7 in Bitter Run, and set ablaze the entire eastern quarter of Saltwater. You would certainly recall him if he were to cross your path." Mara replied. "Oh, he hasn't." The man scowled. "Now you speak on his behalf. I am accountable for my territory." They locked eyes, each refusing to look away for what felt like an eternity. Then Breda inclined her body forward. "He bears a mark," she remarked. "A snake severed at the neck, its left side exposed. If you notice that, do come and seek us out." "We won't," Salus declared. The wagon groaned softly as it navigated the bend. They left without a word of farewell. "In due course," Mara inquired. "You were acquainted with her." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Once she was much like you," he remarked. "In what way do you see me resembling you?" "Isolated yet more vocal than ever. She is on the prowl for a man. She has pursued him for a duration that surpasses your entire existence." Mara gazed at her weathered palms. "Do you believe she will discover him?" "She will perish in her pursuit." After that, spring took on a weighty presence. With a gentle whisper, the rains arrived. The creek overflowed its banks, inundating the lower field with rushing water. Mara suffered the loss of 3 hens to illness and 1 to a cunning fox. She ensnared it, stripped away its skin, and draped the pelt within the barn's confines. One morning she awoke to discover that Salus had vanished. The chill of his bed lingered in the air. His rifle had vanished as well. She lingered for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she prepared his horse for riding. He had abandoned it and journeyed eastward, guided not by a path, but by an instinct. She discovered him 2 ridges away, crouched next to a tree, one hand pressed against the ground as if he were attuned to the whispers of the earth. He appeared unfazed by her presence. "You have a way of making your exits anything but silent," she remarked. He rose to his feet. I caught a whisper in the air, her brow furrowed in discontent. "What sort of thing?" He gazed at her, a shift evident in his expression, now steely and resolute. "They are approaching. Whom might you be referring to?" "Companions I once journeyed alongside." His words sent a chill through her, causing her stomach to plummet. "You failed to inform me. I held on to the hope that they would not discover my presence. You believe they will take your life." He gazed toward the horizon. "They will eliminate you first, merely to reach me." She swallowed. The wind began to stir. The aroma of smoke lingered, a reminder of flames ignited too soon for the warmth of summer. A figure was methodically transforming the landscape with fire. "How many?" she inquired. "Perhaps 4 or even 6. Feel free to take them. I possess the ability to decelerate them." "That is not what I requested." He remained silent. They returned in quietude. Without further inquiry, she simply began to pack her things. On that night, they chose not to kindle a fire. They took turns sleeping. Myra maintained the revolver at her hip, even as she knelt to bring water to a boil. The following day, Salas commenced his excavation. "What occupies your time at this moment?" she inquired. "Trench exists," she gazed, "contemplating your intention to wage a battle. This is the sole endeavor I am truly familiar with." She extended her assistance to him. They toiled relentlessly, their hands raw and bleeding from the effort. In the parched creek bed, they concealed traps, sharpened stakes, and lifted the floorboards to stow rifles beneath. She accomplished everything in silence. Yet the nature of her quietude had transformed. It had transcended fear. It was a time of preparation. As the fourth day broke, the first shot pierced the stillness of dawn. They approached on foot, wise enough to avoid riding in, aware that the noise would betray their presence. Celis delivered a precise shot at 60 yards, piercing cleanly through the collarbone. Another triggered a wire and sacrificed half his leg. Yet the others continued to arrive. As darkness descended, two lifeless forms rested in the yard, while Celis clutched his side, a bullet wound not deep, yet oozing a relentless stream of crimson. Myra pulled him through the threshold, ripping her worn dress into strips for bandages. "You should go," he said. "Repeat that, and I'll make sure you have another hole to contend with." His lips quivered, a gesture that barely resembled a smile. She remained by his side throughout the night. Before the first light of dawn, his fever finally broke. With trembling hands, she offered him the warm broth. He seized her wrist. "I believed I had finished," he remarked. "Finished with the struggle, finished with the hurt. Your assessment was incorrect. I typically am." They lingered in that position for some time. In the shadowy expanse beyond the charred trees, the remnants of his past lingered, armed with matches and knives. They would arrive. She would bring them together, for the reason that Salas remained. And thus she would as well. At the break of dawn, three men approached, moving with the grace of those who had spent their existence on horseback, dismounting only when the specter of death loomed close. Devoid of colors, stripped of flags, their faces bore no mercy. Only dust clung to their boots and rope lay coiled on their belts, as if the act of killing had become a mere afterthought. Someone had to face the consequences. From her vantage point in the loft, Myra caught sight of them. She remained silent. Her fingers grazed the rifle stock resting against the wall. She recounted the cartridges with meticulous precision and pressed her lips together with such force that they bled. Salas leaned against the corner of the kitchen, his bandaged wound a testament to his recent struggles. The fever had subsided, yet his strength remained elusive, leaving him in a fragile state. He observed her glide down the stairs, much like a man witnessing the arrival of a tempest. "You don't have to do this," he said. She inspected the bolt on the door. "You didn't either." He fell silent after that. The men approached without a sound, their presence unannounced. They refrained from hurling threats or uttering insults. They approached the boundary of the yard with purpose, standing still as if they understood that the ache of waiting could be more profound than any wound inflicted by a bullet. Myra made her way onto the porch. She donned her mother's coat, oversized at the shoulders, with the sleeves turned back twice. She remained still. The tallest among them took a step forward. His nose, a testament to past battles, had mended in a way that told stories of its own, while his eyes gleamed with the cold, unyielding beauty of polished stone. "Where is the specter?" "You arrived for Celis," she remarked. He remained steadfast, unwilling to depart. The man let out a hearty laugh. "You believe you are obstructing the path." She lifted the rifle with determination. "I find myself in a place of my own making." He inclined his head slightly. "You are not him. You did not set Waco ablaze. You did not submerge that sheriff in oil. You are merely a girl." "No," she replied. "I am the girl who witnessed her stepfather decay in a cellar. I am the girl who excavated her own resting place yet chose to stand tall instead of succumbing to it, and I am the one who will take this decisive action." He smiled then, though the kindness was absent. Behind him, the others spread out, circling like a pack of wolves. She lingered until the first one struck the fence line. Then she pulled the trigger. The explosion reverberated through the valleys. The man recoiled, his shoulder torn apart, cries consumed by the cacophony. The rest pressed ahead with determination. With a swift motion, Silas burst through the door, steadying himself against the frame as he unleashed two shots. One man stumbled to the ground, while the other ascended to the porch. He seized Mara by her coat, pulling her away from the steps. She remained silent, neither crying out nor pleading. With fierce determination, she raked her nails across his face, delivered a powerful kick, wriggled free from the confines of the coat, and tumbled into the dirt, seizing the revolver from her belt as she sprang to her feet. She fired a shot that struck him in the throat. He passed away in silence. In the aftermath, she lingered in the yard, breathless, a streak of blood marking her cheek, her coat left behind. Her fingers ached from the relentless grip of the gun. Celeste staggered out, pallid and trembling. He inquired if that was the case for all of them. She inclined her head in agreement. "Burn them," he commanded. Silence enveloped them until the night fell. The flames flickered weakly, while the acrid scent of ash and gunpowder hung heavily in the air. Mara scrubbed her hands relentlessly, the skin peeling away with each vigorous motion. She perched next to Silas on the step, the rifle resting across her knees as if it were a loyal lapdog. "They'll send more," she remarked. "Indeed, your actions have caused significant harm." "Indeed. Apologies." Silas remained silent for an extended period. In that moment, I found myself there. It seems uncertain if it holds any significance at this point. There are still those who oppose you. Fewer than I once did, she reclined, her hair cascading long once more. She remained oblivious. "I believe I took a man's life today," she confessed. "You certainly did." He towered over me. Silas shifted her gaze toward her. His face was drawn, yet something flickered within, a raw and honest pride that seemed to emerge from deep within. "You surpassed him in the areas that truly mattered." She offered no smile, merely a single nod. That night, a tempest swept in, unleashing torrents of rain and winds fierce enough to wrench the barn door ajar, sending howls through the crevices in the roof. Rest eluded them. In the shadows, she inquired, "What was Waco?" "An error," he remarked. "Ignite the flames." I ignited the flame, unaware of who remained within. "You sprint forward." He cast a glance in her direction as I made my way forward. She angled her visage toward the window. "I would choose to charge headlong into the flames rather than turn my back on them. Your opportunity may soon present itself." He let out a single cough, grimacing as he placed a hand against his side. She stepped forward to assist. He dismissed her with a wave. "No," he said, "you did enough." She settled back into her seat. The wind shook the windows with a restless fervor. "Someone has shown you the art of combat," she remarked. "An attempt was made. Your fingers brush against me. I already am." Spring surged with greater intensity into May. Wildflowers erupted in a vibrant display along the ridge. The birds made their way back to the loft. The earth began to heal, yet the path to the village remained desolate. None had the courage to approach, not at this moment. Mara repaired the fences, sowed beans, and planted potatoes. She discovered the ancient ledger in which her mother had meticulously recorded milk tallies and seed counts. She began to fill it out. Silas grew in strength. He now limped with greater intensity, and his slumber stretched on for longer periods. Yet his aim remained unwavering, and when the wolves returned, genuine beasts, not mere men, he felled too, sending the remainder fleeing into the shadows. On a serene afternoon, she discovered him perched by the creek, his boots discarded, feet immersed in the cool water. She had never witnessed him so motionless during all the time he had been present. "You seem as though happiness is just within your reach," she remarked. "Nearly. Are you contemplating leaving?" He raised his gaze. "Would you allow me?" She shrugged. "I've allowed worse men to linger, and I dealt with those who didn't bother to ask." He let out a brief, harsh laugh. "Mara," he said, and it was the first time he had ever spoken her name out loud. "It seems my presence is unnecessary. I am aware. You desire my presence to linger." She strolled to the water's edge, settled beside him, her gaze averted as she replied, "I seek nothing. I merely understand what is just." He nodded slowly, "And thus it is." She gazed across the hills, where the wind wove through the grass like a gentle sigh, and the remnants of ancient fires had at last dissipated. "Indeed," she replied, "it is." After that moment, silence enveloped them, yet an unspoken understanding took root. Not peace nor forgiveness, but the nascent form of something resilient enough to endure. They had truly earned the silence at this point. Summer arrived, a blade cloaked in softness, gentle days concealing an edge beneath. The earth donned its verdant cloak once more. The chickens had laid their eggs, the creek flowed with clarity, and the blood that once stained the porch boards had dulled to a rusty hue. Not vanished, never truly vanished, but woven into the very essence of the place now. The past remained unspoken between them. It lingered like a mirage on the edge of perception, ever present yet stripped of its identity. Silas dedicated his mornings to the field, guiding her in the art of moving with a rifle rather than against it, helping her to sense the wind against her cheek and understand the bullet's trajectory, teaching her to strike without hesitation while preserving a fragment of her essence. She paid attention. She acquired knowledge. In the quiet of the night, she would read aloud from a weathered Bible, its pages softened by time and water, a cherished relic of her mother. She bypassed the Psalms and the parables. She delved into the challenging passages, the fury and the meandering, the stillness amidst the arid expanse. Silas listened intently, head bowed yet eyes wide open. One evening, after they had set snares, chopped wood, and mended the west fence once more, Mara posed a question that had been embedded in her like a thorn. What occurs if no one arrives anymore? Silas hesitated before responding. He meticulously shaped a handle for a broken knife, the blade polished and honed, emerging from the charred remnants of the old shed. Someone always arrives, he remarked. It is merely a question of timing. But what if they actually do, she inquired. What if it's only the two of us now? What if the world were to forget? He gazed at her, neither gentle nor harsh, simply unwavering. Thus we remain prepared regardless. She nodded, for it was the sole response she could rely upon. August split the heavens wide, exhaling warmth akin to the breath of a furnace. The coyotes slinked along the fence under the cover of darkness, driven by hunger to tempt fate with the threat of gunfire. One morning, Silas stumbled upon a fresh set of prints along the north trail, the boots too deep to belong to a mere passerby. Without uttering a word, he resumed the meticulous task of oiling his gun. Mara observed. They are observing us. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. What is the quantity? It's difficult to articulate, yet they exhibit a remarkable patience. Thus, they found themselves waiting once more. It had transformed into a certain cadence. Anticipation hung thick in the air, a palpable mix of tension and silence, punctuated only by the metallic scent of blood. And then the waiting began. She no longer flinched. That aspect of her had withered away like aged bark. Only remnants of bone and flickering flames remained. It unfolded on a Tuesday, with a sky so clear it could easily be mistaken for tranquility. Mara was boiling live for soap when the first shot shattered the kitchen window, embedding itself in the cupboard door just behind her. She fell to the ground, already in motion, seized the rifle from beneath the table, listened to Silas's shouts from outside, registered the sound of return fire, the shattering of glass, and the frantic cries of the chickens. With a swift motion, she kicked open the back door and crouched low along the fence, recalling the lessons he had imparted to her. 3 men, 2 positioned behind the cart wreck by the old well, while one maneuvers cautiously through the tall grass, keeping a wide berth. Silas was already bleeding by the time she reached him, her shoulder once more, the same side, the same damn spot. With his back turned to the barn, he held his gun at the ready, yet his aim was faltering. You always get shot here, she muttered, seizing his belt and pulling him toward the trough, as if it were a rite of passage. He let out a cough, while you voiced your grievances excessively. She pressed her lips to his cheek, parched, feverish, stained with crimson. Be quiet and provide me with support. Then she shifted. Subtle and swift, akin to a stream slipping beneath a threshold. She circled through the hayfield, capturing the lone flanker in profile. He never laid eyes on her. With a swift and precise motion, she fired at him, the bullet finding its mark in his gut. Seizing his rifle, she turned it against the others, effectively pinning them down. Silas advanced with a deliberate pace, wounds seeping profusely, yet he executed a clean kill, striking true through the skull. The final man he pursued. Mara refrained from pursuing. She lingered above the fallen, exhaling sharply through clenched teeth until the tremors subsided. Then she pivoted, casting a glance over her shoulder. Silas leaned against the barn, his complexion wan, breaths coming in shallow gasps. She sank to her knees. Stay with me, she implored. His gaze met hers. I'm tired, he remarked. I am aware. Do you still possess a shovel? She stifled a laugh, caught off guard. I have no intention of laying you to rest. Perhaps you have as well. I am not. A profound stillness. He extended his hand, gently brushing her cheek with fingers stained by blood, dirt, and the weight of countless regrets. You transcended mere survival, he remarked. She clasped his hand gently. You did as well. He survived, not on that day. She sustained his breath. meticulously stitched his wounds, nourished him with broth once more, and remained by his side through 3 long days of fever and the murmurs of forgotten names. Upon awakening in earnest, the first sight that greeted him was her visage. "You remained," he remarked. "You were aware that I would." That autumn, they undertook the task of rebuilding. In the heart of the town, she peddled her pelts. People ceased to inquire, merely exchanging coins while averting their gazes. He began to limp less and engage in conversation more frequently. At times, she penned letters, directed to no one in particular, mere words sprawled across the page, expressing sentiments she had never voiced aloud. "I am not dead," she wrote once, "and neither is he." The land mended gradually. The house remained unappealing, marred and singed, bearing the marks of time, yet it belonged to them. On a crisp October day, she returned from inspecting the traps to discover him seated on the porch, a second chair crafted alongside his own, somewhat askew, ruggedly crafted, yet undeniably sturdy. She took her place within it. Silence enveloped them. They stood in silence, observing as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its final glow over the valley that had long been abandoned by riders, not out of fear, but because the girl who once inhabited that space had transformed into something entirely different. Neither prey nor child nor a widow of fate, but rather a cautionary tale. And the man beside her remained steadfast. Amidst the flames, through the chill of winter and the cost of bygone transgressions, he remained. In that moment, they shared the stillness, observing the tranquility side by side.